In a world of fierce battles and unexpected twists, meet Thors, a Viking warrior who escaped the brutal cycle of war. But when a looming threat forces him back into action, the village faces an ultimatum. Fight or face annihilation. Get ready for an epic journey as we dive into Viking resurgence. Subscribe now for an adventure filled with sword clashes, strategic moves, and a saga of resilience. Don't miss out on the action. The story begins with a formidable Viking warrior, Thor, who faced overwhelming odds during a fierce battle. Despite being outnumbered, he showcased remarkable composure, effortlessly dispatching enemies. Thorkel, a giant and Thor's friend, assisted him, emphasizing the importance of focus. Moreover, Thor, determined to end the conflict, displayed exceptional agility and combat skills, swiftly eliminating foes on multiple ships. A moment of reflection occurred when an enemy's plea reminded him of his own life. Nonetheless, distraction led to a shoulder wound from arrows, and enemies overpowered him temporarily. However, Thor, resilient as ever, turned the tide with his sheer strength, ending the battle with a strategic move of stabbing the enemy with its own sword. As he swam away, contemplating the senseless violence in the war, killing those whom he did not even ever know, he vowed never to return to the war. Several years later, Thor now resides in an Icelandic village with his family, having faked his death to escape the war's grasp. In the village, an elderly sailor named Leif entertains children with tales of distant lands. Meanwhile, concerned about the harsh winter and the subsequent death of their beloved members one by one, Leif advises Thors on safeguarding their people and even the cattle. Thors' daughter, Ylva, brings weakened sheep, prompting Thors to discuss safety measures for the village. The next morning, while clearing snow, Ylva discovers a sickly man buried beneath. Thor, determined to help, revives the man, a runaway slave from Halfdan's household. Upon discovering the runaway slave, Ylva urges Thors to return him to avoid legal trouble, but Thors is curious about the slave's escape. A villager interrupts, informing them that Halfdan has arrived with a platoon, claiming the slave belongs to him. Halfdan confronts them at the docks, showcasing his ruthlessness by disfiguring a villager. Subsequently, Halfdan demands the return of the slave, asserting ownership. Thors offers to buy the slave, negotiating a deal for 8 sheep. In addition, despite the hefty price, the slave dies hours later. Thors mourns the loss, holding a funeral for the deceased. Ylva questions the decision to pay for a dead slave, but Thors remains unperturbed. Thorfinn rushes up, yelling about a warship approaching on their shore. Thors hurries over, asking what's going on. Leif urges Thors to check it out, and they head to the docks, where a crowd has gathered to see a beautiful long ship. Disciplined Vikings, wearing fancy armor with a big banner, disembark, led by their leader Floki. Floki takes off his helmet, bows to Thor, and calls him their leader. The village is stunned by the revelation, but Thor stays cool, as if he is completely unbothered by the title. He asks Floki what he wants, and they head to Thor's home while the Vikings surround the village. Inside, Thor questions Floki about his sudden appearance after 15 years. Floki shares that the King of England sent men who attacked their land a few days ago. They killed many of their men, including the King of Denmark's sister-in-law. Now, the King of Denmark is gearing up for a big invasion, calling on all Vikings to join the fight. Despite the serious penalty for desertion being death, the king is willing to overlook Thor's past and just wants him to fight. Thors declines the offer at first, however. Floki drops a bombshell. If Thors refuses, the entire village will be massacred. Faced with this grim choice, Thors reluctantly agrees to join the battle. Floki, on his departure, declares Thors as the leader for the war against England, welcoming villagers to join. Leif questions his reluctance, and Thor shares concern for inexperienced men facing the harsh reality of war. Despite Thor's reservations, the village buzzes with excitement, eager to taste what war brings to them. The next day, villagers prepare the warship. Meanwhile, Thorfinn's rough play during war simulations results in a broken bone of his opponent. Later, Thor notices Thorfinn holding his old dagger from his war days and rebukes his son for holding the dagger despite having no enemies around, warning against needless fights. Ignoring the advice from his father, Thorfinn runs outside, leaving Thor watching the naive son with concern. The next day, Thor, preparing to depart, selects only 5 men for the battle. Leif truthfully informs a concerned woman that Thor is leaving the rest behind in Norway for their safety. Due to ship limitations, only 5 can join. The girl leaves, and Thor calls for Thorfinn, who's missing. As time runs out, Thor asks his wife to care for Thorfinn. With a large oar, Thor, joined by 5 men, surprises onlookers by rowing more powerfully than all combined. Out in the ocean, Thor sets up the mast while tired men rest. Thorfinn, unnoticed, startles everyone by emerging from a barrel, prompting a stern response from Thor. Night falls, and Thorfinn eventually sleeps on his father's lap. On night guard duty with another man, Thor and his companions are alerted by Leif at dawn that they're nearing an island for a brief rest. Rowing into a cove, Leif senses something amiss. Thor, noticing high walls, shares the unease and suggests backing off. Debris starts falling as they retreat. Thor shields Thorfinn while others seek cover. Their exit is blocked, but all are unharmed. Thor, anticipating enemies, warns the group. 2 warships enter the cove. Inexperienced men in Thor's boat panic. Thor, unsheathing his sword, cautions against it, takes his own sword, and gives Thorfinn a small dagger. As the enemy approaches, Thor leaps onto their ship, stunning them all. Thor effortlessly dispatches attackers, even stunning people from his tribe. He does not even bother taking his sword out and skillfully incapacitates multiple foes, showcasing impressive combat prowess. Advancing steadily, he incapacitates more assailants, taking them down one after the other. Facing the vice commander, he subdues attackers with finesse. Even when confronted with axes and swords, Thor disarms and non-lethally incapacitates adversaries, displaying remarkable strength. Meanwhile, Vice Commander, under the influence of mushrooms he just consumed, goes berserk, assaulting his own men mercilessly. Despite attempts to restrain him, the Vice Commander relentlessly attacks, causing panic. Unaffected by pain, he violently damages the ship, prompting Thor's realization of his uncontrollable state. Thor swiftly handles Bjorn's attacks, using his experience to counter and knock him down. Observing Askeladd's invasion plan, Thor is momentarily interrupted by Bjorn, whom he incapacitates by tossing towards Askeladd's approaching ship. Thor cuts the invasion boards, preventing the enemy's advance. Assessing the situation, he sees 30 men and archers on the opposing ship but decides on a duel. Thor challenges Askeladd, offering a chance for survival if Askeladd wins. Askeladd accepts, revealing he was hired to eliminate Thor, likely orchestrated by Floki. The duel commences, with Thor calmly advancing, surprising Askeladd. Crafty Askeladd drops a sail to obstruct Thor's view, attempting a surprise attack from below. Thor skillfully avoids Askeladd's surprise attack, but sustains a minor wound. Despite the intense fight, Thor intentionally allows Askeladd to break his sword, trapping him in his plan. Seizing the moment, Thor disarms Askeladd and places his sword at Askeladd's throat, declaring victory. But Askeladd refuses to surrender and offers Thor to kill him. However kind, Thor refuses to kill him. Askeladd, stunned by this act of kindness, acknowledges Thor's exceptional skill and proposes Thor to become their leader. Askeladd's crew is initially shocked by his willingness to relinquish leadership to Thor, but he quickly dismisses it as a joke. However, the situation takes a dark turn when Bjorn wakes up, seizes Thorfinn, and threatens him with a sword. Thor demands Askeladd keep his promise, but Askeladd insists on fulfilling his vow to kill Thor. Realizing the danger to his son, Thor sacrifices himself, instructing Askeladd to leave them be. As arrows rain down on him, Thor remains resolute. Jorm, under Askeladd's command, releases Thorfinn. The boy, tearful, clings to his father, who urges him to care for the family. Thor instructs Leif to take his head to the king, ensuring their village's safety. Askeladd withdraws his troops, and Thor's companions head back on Leif's ship. Thorfinn unexpectedly appears on Thor's boat, wielding a dagger and vowing revenge. Despite suggestions to throw him overboard, Askeladd, influenced by Thor's selflessness, instructs his crew to leave the kid alone. Stranded and weakened on the ship, Thorfinn struggles for survival without fresh water and food. As Askeladd's crew lands on an island, Thorfinn attempts to follow too, but collapses due to extreme hunger and weakness. In the night, he wakes up to find the crew pillaging a village, leaving devastation in their wake. Thorfinn, armed with a dagger, witnesses the destruction before deciding not to attack Askeladd in his sleep, rejecting the cowardly act. The next morning, Thorfinn challenges Askeladd to a duel. Holding a sword too large for him, Askeladd, amused, accepts without drawing his own sword. Thorfinn charges, but Askeladd effortlessly dodges, leaving Thorfinn struggling to free his sword from a wooden board. Thorfinn, desperate for vengeance and hungry for day, watches Askeladd's troops feast on lamb and beef. They look down at him and insultingly throw an already eaten piece of chicken leg, but he refuses to touch an offered bone and retreats into the forest. The next morning, the voice commander is taken aback by Thorfinn's survival, as he collects mushrooms. Thorfinn accuses him of cheating in the duel that led to his father's death. At night, Thorfinn, with nothing to eat and fill his appetite, heads in Askeladd's establishment and attempts to satisfy his appetite with the remaining bones, encounters a wolf. Initially defenseless, he grabs his dagger and successfully defends himself. Frustrated at failing to catch a rabbit, he throws the dagger, discovering a knack for knife throwing. Diligent practice pays off, and he successfully catches a rabbit, providing a much-needed hearty meal after days of hunger. The next day, as Askeladd's group prepares to depart, Thorfinn confronts him once more, challenging him to another duel in front of everyone. Reluctantly, Askeladd agrees. Thorfinn aggressively attacks with his dagger, but Askeladd effortlessly dodges and kicks him away repeatedly. Despite Thorfinn's persistence, Askeladd continues to overpower him. When Thorfinn attempts to throw his dagger, Askeladd skillfully deflects it. Retrieving the dagger, Askeladd throws it in front of Thorfinn, stating that if he wishes to duel, he must first earn glory on the battlefield before getting another chance.